unfortunately, what happened to me one day was I had a seizure, and I found out that I had epilepsy, which is neurological, but that caused me to where they had to fire me or lay me off from this job, and I had it for 5 years. I was teaching here for 5 years and moved up from assistant all the way up to lead teacher and was running the classroom, but they said, you know, do you really want to, would you as a parent really want your teacher teaching your child when the teacher could fall on the floor, you know, and not watch your child? And so I had to leave. I ended up leaving and just felt really depressed about it. And my depression got so bad that I actually the first thing I did was I took a knife out of the knife block, cut myself up, and so I got the marks all over my arms, and that's the first thing I did. And then my pills for my seizures, one day I took the pills and took them into my stomach. I took them and ended up getting pumped. They had to pump my stomach out, and again, I was okay still, but people were saying, oh, you're just trying to get attention, you know, but I was really just depressed. Before I started college, I started feeling depressed and scared that, like, oh no, where am I going? What am I going to do? So my doctor ended up diagnosing me with minor depression. I was crying a lot for no reason, out of nowhere. It was just crying. I ended up taking medications for it to get better, and the medications weren't helping me, and I was even stubborn to take the pills. Like, why should I do this? It's not going to help me at all. So while I was still in the school, I ended up repeating classes because, like, I can't finish. I'm done with this. You know, I'm never going to become anything. So forget this. You know, forget my life. So what I ended up doing was I ended up like leaving the school, and I started. I'm going to tell you guys this. I started prostituting myself, and this was back then. I was doing that to make the money and pay for school. I wasn't getting my financial aid all the way, like the amounts that I needed, so I was doing that and visiting bathhouses and doing a lot of things that are not appropriate and that I'm ashamed of, but, you know, helps you grow. So one day I was out with my mother. This was back in 2009 on the 20th of April. Her and I went out for a mother-son date, and we went out to eat to our favorite food. We went to have some seafood, and then I hugged her and I said goodbye. So make sure you say I love you to your family members when you leave them. Make sure you always say that, friends and family members, because 2 days later, on the 22nd, I woke up and my little brother called me. I was getting ready for a bath to go out on a date, and he said, Mom died. Mom's dead. And I was like, what happened? What, are you joking? You know, what's going on? It turned out she died of methamphetamine intoxication. I knew something was going on with her, and it's just, I didn't know. I wasn't living with her, but she died, and I went back to her house and saw her dead body, purple lips, everything. She was cold to the touch. When you know, if you've ever touched the deceased body, she was cold, and we called the ambulance, and the people came and took her body away. And ever since that day, I lost it. I lost myself. I ended up going into a seizure again on that same day. I went into a seizure again, and they took me to the hospital, and they said, you're really depressed? And my depression came out to where it's called dysthymia disorder. They found out I have dysthymia disorder. A lot of people, you may have heard major depression, but dysthymia disorder is where it can come on at any moment. I want to go on all the speeches that I can, because to let people know that, hey, this is out there. You know, your friend is not just depressed or sad, like really just trying to seek attention from you. And to me, when I was first diagnosed, they said, like people were telling me, even at the mental hospital, they're telling me like, oh, you're such an attention seeker, you know, what are you trying to do? I'm like, I just want help, you know, what's going on with me, you know? And then you don't know until you feel alone, you know, you're the only one, and how do you speak out to people who are not going to judge you? And now I was told that by my psychiatrist. I just went to her yesterday, matter of fact, and she said, you need to speak out and just let people know what's going on. Stop holding it in. The more you hold it in, you know how the balloon is going to pop, and it popped, you know, and I'm surprised I'm here right now because I'm supposed to be dead, you know, maybe I'm a cat or something in another life, you know, I have my 9 lives or whatever, but it's like now I'm in the point where it's like, stop doing that. Come and speak to you guys, speak to everyone, and I just get it out. That's my acknowledgement to you guys, is just get it out, especially you guys, you men. You stop being Mr. Tough Guy, you know, just stop that. It's, you know, guys cry too.
My symptoms of depression started when I was 13 years old. I was in the 7th grade back in the Philippines. I went to high school and college over there. So back then, we didn't have any mental health resources, as far as I knew. Because I became actively suicidal when I was 13. I'm sure it started earlier than that, but It just got worse and worse, didn't get any better because I wasn't getting any kind of help. So I became actively suicidal and I just ran away from home one night. And I just wandered the streets and I left a suicide note, yeah. I just wandered the streets and I hit the end of a railroad tracks. And I just stood there waiting for a train to hit me. I mean, it was really that bad. So fortunately, the police found me because, you know, my parents said I didn't come home that night. So they found me, took me home. Next day, school counselor says I need to see a psychiatrist. And so they took me to a psychiatrist, and I was diagnosed with having a nervous breakdown. And that was all it was, just a nervous breakdown. And then he gave me Valium, and that was all the meds I took. And there was no other kind of treatment, no therapy, no groups, no one else to talk to. So I was taking that Valium, I think, for the rest of 7th grade. They took me out of school for the 7th grade, and I didn't go back until 8th grade. So it was, you know, it's like I felt so alone then because I didn't know what was going on with me. All I did was write in my journal and say, the devil is back. And I realized that the devil is my depression. So I didn't have anyone to talk to. I felt so alone, isolated, and I just kept to myself all the time. Because there was no help in the Philippines then, you know, no mental health resources. I stayed home from school during the time and didn't go back to school until freshman year in high school. And struggling every day still, not knowing what was going on with me. You know, so, because it was frowned upon then during those days, you know. It's probably improved a lot now, but then, you know, we didn't talk about it in the family, we didn't talk about it at home, we didn't talk about it in school, you know. So, but somehow I managed to go through high school because my parents told me, go to church, join this group, you know, a youth group. So I went to a youth group, and I'm hoping that my faith could cure me or something. So I went through that high school, graduated high school. Then I started going to college there in a Catholic university, and still struggling, trying to understand what's going on with me. Every day I was feeling like, you know, I don't know what's going on with me. I was feeling suicidal. I don't know why. And nobody would help me. So somehow I was able to finish college, and I graduated with a bachelor's degree in journalism. The whole time, not knowing what was happening, what was going on with me. So finally I came here to the United States about 20 years ago, kind of old. And when I started working for, you know, the county, I got some health insurance, and I was able to see a psychiatrist. And then I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. And it was such a big relief to find out, you know, just put a name to what was, you know, what my illness was. So I grew up in a culture, in the Philippine culture, strict Catholic upbringing. And all they tell you is, have faith, pray, be strong, you know. And for some reason it wasn't enough for me. High school, college, and you know, my parents just told me, you know, stay busy, make sure you finish your studies, and that's what I did. So, and then I realized that I grew up in a family of alcoholics and drug addicts. So it was so obvious now, it's so obvious now that that was what's going on in my family. So it just didn't start with me, you know, it runs in the family. I came to the US about 20 years ago, started working for the county, and I got health insurance with Kaiser. And then I started seeing psychiatrists and therapists on a regular basis. And I started taking meds. And I was properly diagnosed with not a nervous breakdown, but bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, panic disorder, anxiety. So it was 4 things compared to just that one thing. You know, that's why I'm so messed up, you know. And so from then, starting going to therapy on a regular basis, I learned the coping skills and how to deal with my symptoms and all these triggers that come with my illness, you know. And but the worst part is when, you know, when you're bipolar and you have borderline personality disorder. I don't know if you guys know those, yeah. So it's not just one thing. It's not just your highs and lows with your mania. It's also dealing with rage, anger, and all that stuff. And so my manic episodes were really bad. And the worst one was, I didn't even know I was going through mania. But the worst one was when I was arrested for shoplifting, several years ago. And then instead of going to jail, which I should have probably, I went in 2 years probation. My NA sponsor was there with me. She was really effective. She talked to the judge and she said, I was in a recovery program and I had this addiction, so I couldn't help myself. And when I was going through the shoplifting, I was like in a mall every weekend, taking stuff, stealing stuff. I was getting away with it. So, I was in a state of euphoria. It's this state right here. And it was like nothing can stop me. If I had to jump off a building, I would. If I could fly, I would fly. So it was that kind of feeling that as long as I was getting away with it, I kept on doing. And that was stealing. So until I got caught, of course. So, of course, none of my family ever knew that. I never told anybody or any of my friends because the stigma they're talking about is the shame and the guilt that you're going through. You don't want to let people know that, oh, you're a bad person because you steal stuff. But it's actually not being bad. It's being sick. So anyway, my worst depressive episode was I had several suicide attempts, and I've been in the psych ward years and years, every single year. And the worst one was when I actually went through with my suicide attempt. And I took all my pills and I mixed it with alcohol and I just passed out. And the next thing I found out was I went into a coma for 3 days. So, but then I came back. So it wasn't my time to go.
I was bullied a lot in school, throughout middle school, and it really changed me and destroyed my self-confidence. So coming into high school, I had changed kind of schools and districts, so I had been able to meet new people, and little by little, they all started turning on me, saying, "You're always sad, you never smile, you're boring to be around," and turned their back, and before I knew it, I was back at point one, where everybody was turning their heads when I walked and saying not so nice comments at things I did. I quickly developed an eating disorder. I started believing that the skinnier I was, the more friends I would make, and the more people would like me, and the more I would thrive. That didn't happen. As I was getting worse and worse, I remember one morning being sent home from a music class because the professor had decided that I couldn't stand on my own, so what was the point in me being in class? He sent me down and I got sent home, and when I came back to school, people would make fun of me the way I would have walked, using the walls to stay standing, or the way I trembled, and they would exaggerate it, make it look like I was drunk or something. And that's when I started to self-harm. The pain actually made me feel alive. It made me feel like everything was going to be okay, which I realized does sound contradictory. Came sophomore year, everything just kept getting worse. I got really suicidal, and my self-harm became a several times a day thing. It was the first thing I did when I woke up, the last thing I did before going to bed. It was in between classes in the bathroom. It was at lunch by myself in a stall. It honestly was like a medication for me. And things really took a turn when one of my friends told me that this was beyond the capacities of anybody helping me and I needed professional help. I didn't want to. In my head, only crazy people go to therapy. That was like a given. That's what everybody thought. That's what everybody knew. But I was kind of forced to go there. I think I spent my first 3 sessions silently sitting there for an hour with a therapist. I didn't need help. I didn't. So when I finally started talking, they sent me to a psychiatrist as well, and they started putting me on meds. And as the self-harm started slowing down, I started having really bad anxiety. And so my junior year, after 2.5 months, I was no longer able to go to school. I started having panic attacks. At first it was kind of like just once in a while, then it became a daily basis, then it was as soon as I saw the school, then it was as soon as I turned on the same street as the school, and little by little I just couldn't even walk by the school. And to go to my therapist, I had to drive by the school, and I would make my mom do a detour just to not go in front of the school. And so the psychiatrist diagnosed me with school phobia, which I was like, you're funny, that's not a thing. Like, what's school phobia? And little by little, it turned into an agoraphobia, turned into a social anxiety disorder, panic disorder, all those fun anxiety disorders. I had to go through a lot of different exposure therapies and things to be able to go outside of my house again. One of the really significant stories I remember being back in school was these 2 boys in my class that would bet every day how much time it would take before I had to leave the classroom because I was having a panic attack. They didn't understand, they didn't know, they never asked. For them, it was a scheme to miss class to get attention. They really just thought I was genuinely doing it to get out of class, when I would have done anything to stay in the classroom. So I never dared tell anybody that I had to drop out of school. I told them I changed schools, that I was doing a lot of ballet at the time, so I told them that I changed to a school that allowed me to do more dancing because the schedule was different. But really, I didn't. I just stayed home for a while. I tried to keep up with my education. I tried going to this kind of tutoring center 2 days a week. I had like 40 kids in there from preschool to senior year. Everyone was there for various reasons. They couldn't stay in a normal school. A lot of them were there because of ADHD or autism. But I couldn't even get there. I'd have panic attacks on the way. We had to stop like on the side of the road a lot of the days to get me to calm down. So we had to leave long before school started just so that I could get there in time. One day my tutor even met us at the cafe next door because I couldn't get into the school. And things really took a turn for me when my eating disorder got worse, because as I was dancing, I had a really big performance, really important one, and 2 days before, my psychiatrist told me that I could not dance. He said, you're too weak, you're too anxious, you're not gonna make it. And I refused. I made it through the show, I barely did. And after that, they didn't tell me, but they put me on a medication, an antipsychotic, that has a very strong weight gain side effect. One that is almost known now when I tell psychiatrists for its weight gain side effect, but they didn't tell me it had that. And so that drove me crazy. And at the end of the summer between my junior and senior year, I did, and it was not my first suicide attempt, but this one landed me in the hospital. From there, they decided to send me to a long-term residential treatment clinic for 3 months. I was an inpatient at a psych treatment center for 3 months. And I was cut out from the world. We were allowed our phones 30 minutes a day, supervised phone calls, and it was really boring. It was really boring. I was really highly medicated, so I spent most of my time sleeping there, and even now I don't actually remember much of what happened because it's all a blur. And I remember when I got out, one of the things that people would say is like sometimes when I would reconnect, see some old friend through like another friend who would be like, oh wow, we haven't seen you in forever, where have you been? And I was always like, oh, just been busy going to school. But I hadn't been to school since they'd seen me in school in junior year. And I just disappeared for 3 months for a lot of people, even my family. My parents, I feel like they were ashamed of having a daughter who suffered from mental health issues, and they did not tell my family members what was going on with me or where I was. I stayed there over Christmas and New Year's, and So I honestly don't know how they pulled off telling my family that I was busy, that I couldn't come to see them for Christmas. But it was, to them, a form of protection to me. They thought that by not telling my family members, they were protecting me from the potentially hurtful comments that my family could make, because they wouldn't understand. In my family, we have several people that suffer from mental health disorders, and they're open about it. So for me, it was always really hurtful that they thought that they wouldn't understand my stories. Eventually, when I got out, I turned 18, got my GED, and I started coming back to college here in a city. I was terrified coming here of being made fun of, because that's all I'd known about school. I'd been through so many hours of therapy, so many years of therapy, so many different types of therapy. And medication is what saved me, because I would walk into the school and I had to take extra anxiety medication. I had to sit at the back corner of the classroom because I needed to make sure that I could see them so they weren't making fun of me behind my back. I was super paranoid about that. And my energy levels were really hard to balance. One of the main diagnoses that I got was bipolar disorder, rapid cycling. And that for me was really hard, because throughout the semester, my ups and downs happened several times. And so I will have times in the semester where my performance in class will be great. I will get everything done super fast. And there are other times where asking me to do my homework or even show up to class is not a thing. For me, it's like, I'll catch everything up next time my mood is up, I promise, but right now I can't do anything. And the DSPS services over here really helped me, because I was able to sit down and explain with the teachers what was going on, how they could help me, what they could do to help me still pass my class, even if half the homework was given in late, things like that. And so it's been a whole journey. The fact for me that I'm transferring this summer and going to a four-year university, it's a huge progress. It's something I honestly did not think would happen. I mean, I didn't even think I would live to graduate high school.
Just say something. Stop being quiet. Be loud like me. I'm one of the loudest people in our clubhouse. So, I say what's on my mind. They all know. I have a thought. I gotta say it. Speak up. Just stop putting everybody together and in the same box, because we all have our own mental illness differently. So everybody's not the same. I want people to speak up. So that's what I need everybody to do. You have a question, just ask it. The stupid, like they say, the stupid question is the one you didn't ask.
We're taught about physical illnesses in school and not mental illnesses. That's one thing when they give you biology classes throughout middle school and high school. I was always like, the brain's part of your body. Why isn't this whole section in it?
So I think for me, it's just sometimes you have to be careful what you say to people, because there's certain people who don't know about mental illness, or who they're not ready to accept the fact that some people are ill, and they don't like the word mentally ill. They don't like the word crazy. They don't like to talk about it. It's really uncomfortable. So for me, it's just I watch myself when I talk to people. I'm not very open about my illness sometimes. So, but because there's that stigma, so you just be careful what you say to some people, especially people that you don't really know that well.
Mental illness doesn't define us, and I think when people say, oh, for example, I've heard people talking about me saying, oh, she's bipolar, and it's like, no, I'm not bipolar, I have bipolar, and it's very different. And so that's an important little change of phrase that really changes things. And the other one is sometimes when we say, oh, just listen to them, they're not asking for problem solving, they're asking for validation. Just saying, oh wow, that must be really hard, or I'm sure that's really frustrating. It doesn't necessarily mean look into your own personal experience and share a story, or try to explain to them how they can get better. It's just listening and being like, just kind of recognizing the emotions they're going through. It can be really helpful.
I need to be there for my younger brothers like that. My parents are passed away, like I said, and so it's like I have to be there for them because, you know, I see this pain that they're going through already. And what made me seek the services is because I was like, oh my God, I really do have this problem. Like my new problem is alcoholism. You know, I'm starting that now, and my dad lives with that, and so it's like I'm already on that. Talking about going to AA possibly, you know, maybe not. I don't know yet, but it's just you have to keep searching for the help. You can't just hide it because it'll get worse later. You know, it could get worse later, depending on your situation. I can't let my younger brother see that. When my mom passed, my younger brother was like, thank you for being here for me. And when he said that, and he told me how much he loved me, I was like, oh my God. And it hurt me so much. I was happy, but it hurt me because I know that I have to help him because he's got his own stuff. And so I, give a lot to my brothers. I just give my shirt off my back. I've done so much, conniving things that I'm not proud of as a Catholic. I'm not proud of, but but for them, for my brothers, and so I've done that, and I'm sad about it, but I'm happy because my brothers are okay. If they're okay, I'm okay. That's how I live my life.
But with depression, and it's kind of builds up, maybe there was a trigger or a bad event or incident, whatever, that kind of builds, and then you start feeling, really sad and then depressed. And then you start to isolate, you don't want to go anywhere, you don't want to see anybody. And I've been that way, so. And then suddenly, there you are, you're back in the psychiatric ward, because you're feeling suicidal and want to kill yourself.
Because sometimes I really just need someone to force me to get out of my house and go somewhere with them. Because as you were saying earlier, there's days where getting out of bed is just too hard. So sometimes having that person that's not gonna take kind of no for an answer, but really helps to have, because at least for me, it really showed they cared. I was getting a regular message from someone being like, hey, how are you doing, checking up, that also was really important to me, just knowing that they were there if I wanted to talk, because I'm less likely to reach out unless they've reached out to me.
There are a lot of times that we just isolate, and my son lives with me and my daughter-in-law, and because people care for you, they care about you, they want to be able to understand your illness in some way, and to help you, they educated themselves. They went to the internet and researched bipolar disorder and bipolar line. If they care about you, they would go the extra mile or something.
So for me, the way I deal with my depression every day, the way I deal with it is I go for walks, I get out, I speak to people, I tell them what I have, I let them know, don't put that stigma, let that stigma go away by telling them, stop hiding who you are. That's the most important thing. You can't hide it, because if you don't hide it, you can't complain when people make fun of you. That's your own fault. In my opinion, that's your own fault, because you're not telling people what you have. The more people, strength in numbers kind of thing. So the more of us who tell what we have, the more of it is going to be like, oh, I know he has it, I know she's got that, so big deal. So let it go, and so that's what I've learned, is just to speak up for yourself. And if you feel scared, go get help. There's someone who's always listening. So just be yourself.
My message is that, for students or young adults, don't be afraid to reach out and talk to someone or ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help.